I've analysed a handful of movies so far on this channel and they've been a very mixed bag. Some were good and well worth talking about, others were a complete chore to get through, only causing me pain. But while writing the script for my next analysis, coming out Christmas Day, I thought there's one holiday between now and Christmas that's on everybody's minds at the moment, Halloween. So I decided to do a Halloween movie analysis, the one you're watching right now. I searched through every movie that I've seen to try to find what the worst Halloween themed movie ever made was, but no luck. I couldn't find anything bad enough to share with you guys. So I took to the internet and searched until I stumbled across something on the same level as Pinocchio and Marmaduke, something fitting to the Halloween theme, The Halloween Family from 2019. This movie caught my attention because just look at it, and the further I got into this analysis, it became more clear that I picked the right movie. The Halloween Family was directed by James Snyder, who is responsible for such movies as... I'm only now just realizing that 19 of these 24 movies came out in 2019. James, mate, you had a busy year that year. And according to Letterboxd, James has been making movies since 2018. Anyway, the cast of this movie is stacked. Thomas Carr, Maria Petrano, and Jacob Tyler, who collectively have done 3 other projects besides this one. Now, usually at this point in the video, I would go into the history of the movie and how it was made, what was the thought behind it, all that sort of stuff, but not for this one. You see, Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and Letterboxd give me no information whatsoever. So I took it upon myself to look into the director and was very confused with what came up. That's right, still no information. But what do I have? A picture of James Snyder. Now, I did a deep dive in this man, and I'm not even sure if this is the James Snyder that directed the movie, because all that comes up is a profile on the WWF Canada page. So either Google just used the first image they could find, or our boy James leads WWF Canada's Science, Knowledge and Innovation team while creating Halloween movies on the side. So with little information, let me walk you through The Halloween Family, because I strongly believe this is the worst Halloween movie of all time. Also, if it wasn't obvious, I watch these movies in full, then a second time to write the analysis on them, and sometimes even a third or fourth time if needed. So please do me a favor and like this video if you enjoy, because I go through a lot of pain writing these, but hey, that's all part of the job. So without further ado, let me take you through and let you meet the Halloween family. Our nightmare begins on this establishing shot of this really secluded looking town. Like, the main part of the town looks alright, but then you zoom out and you realize it's surrounded by ocean, and trust me, once we meet these characters, you'll understand why this town is secluded on an Alcatraz-like island. The two characters talk about Mischief Night and we see this tracking shot of the two of them walking down the road, but all goes to hell when the camera swaps to in front of the characters. Now that is why it's a Halloween movie. Also, if you look at their feet, because you know I already was, they're not even walking properly. The tall one, Fred, seems to be gliding like he's walking on ice, and the small one, Larry, is yet to touch the floor. Back to Mischief Night, the whole appeal of this for them is that they can go out and be themselves without having people be scared of them. It's kind of obvious that they're talking about Halloween here, but I'm not quite sure why they just don't say Halloween. Is it a licensing thing? Can you license a holiday? I don't know, but we're sticking with Mischief Night. While walking, the cinnamon stick waves his fist in the air like Grandpa Simpson at the clouds because he disagrees with this point. People call him lazy all the time for just wrapping himself in gauze. And then, very on brand for the Grandpa Simpson-like character, just weirdly grunts in the middle of his sentence. If you haven't been able to pick up on it already, this movie has very, very few camera angles. So far, we've had the overhead, the close-up, the wide shot, and then the weird extreme close-up. I keep going on tangents from one point to another, but that's just because that's what this movie does. I'll be attempting to focus on a weird camera movement, and then Fred goes... Anyway, let's focus up, because there's a lot of Halloween goodness to talk about here. To summarize what we've seen so far, it's Mischief Night. People don't accept these two for who they are. Larry likes that he has this day to be himself, and Fred wants to see people's faces when he undresses in front of them. That sounds weird, but I'll play the clip.
Sometimes I want to unwrap and watch their faces when these dusty bandages hit the floor.
While Fred talks about his desire to commit public indecency, he shakes his fist again, further proving that these characters are just on looped animation cycles, hence why the mouths don't line up whatsoever. Speaking of things on a loop, if you haven't noticed already, we're a minute and a half into the actual movie, and the two characters have walked past this very house God knows how many times. We get a sense of the bond between these two characters. Larry says Fred is his best friend and he couldn't possibly imagine having more fun on Mischief Night with anybody else than he would with him. And Fred reciprocates this. Larry thinks it would be cool if how they looked was just a costume. And then after Mischief Night, they could just wash everything off and then go back to being normal people and not have everybody scared of them and think they're gross. Neither of these characters started their lives like this. They start reminiscing about what their lives were like before they were turned into a mummy and a zombie. They ultimately prefer how life once was over how it is now. They would take being normal, candy-loving people over being seen as scary, ugly monsters any day of the week. But Fred says they should accept things for the way they are, because at the end of the day, there's no going back to their previous lives. But Larry gets the idea that maybe, just maybe, there's somebody out there who can grant them this wish. We now get the sense that these two characters are on completely different journeys. Neither of them like life how it is now, but Fred has come to accept it, whereas Larry would go back in a heartbeat. Fred brings up this legend he's heard about that could result in making their wish come true, but he's certain it's just a legend. They come to a stop and have this weird cycle of animations while they agree that it's just time to enjoy Mischief Night for what it is. After stopping for about 3 seconds, the two continue to walk down the treadmill that is this road. Larry says that living here and being as they are isn't all that bad. I also wanted to point out that Fred spikes the lens while Larry is talking. Classic Jim Halpert fan over here. During Larry's monologue, they're met by this troll-looking guy who sounds worse than Larry and Fred.
Hey guys!
This fellow is Boo, and he asks if the two are ready for Mischief Night, and they just stare straight off into the distance while he's asking this. Boo's animation is just as bad as everything else in this movie so far. Although I must point out that Fred looks a lot like claymation whenever he talks, and his teeth are just so real. Boo seems to be regarded as a celebrity in this little town. Larry states that Mischief Night just wouldn't be the same without the one and only Boogeyman. Boo tells the boys that he loves setting up these big celebrations, but it's a lot to manage. He wants to scare everyone in the town, but he only has one night to do it. He devises a plan that sends Larry and Fred down the east side of town while Boo takes the west, more efficiently scaring more people. Although Larry isn't on board with this idea and tells Boo that they have the plan of just kicking back and watching the festivities from a distance, saying they're not that big on scaring but would rather just have some fun. Despite Fred stating earlier that he wants to unwrap himself and watch people's faces when he takes off his bandages, Boo's trying to convince them to hop on this spooky night he has planned, but they're not buying it, which offends Boo because this town is used to being scary and doing scary things, not having light-hearted fun. Larry tries explaining how he's sick of everybody running in fear from them, and they just want to mingle and make new friends. But as a counter-argument, Boo states that what's more fun than making new friends is trapping people when they have nowhere to run, proving how sadistic this little boogeyman is. Larry asks Boo if he's ever heard of the ancient tale of Ghoul, the person they were talking about earlier who could potentially fulfill their wishes. Boo's heard a lot about Ghoul and tells them that it's not just a legend and it is very, very true. He's just really hard to find. Turns out Ghoul is actually a tree that can uproot himself and move around whenever he wants. He confirms the suspicion the boys had about Ghoul having magical wish-answering powers, and states that he wishes everyone that finds him one wish once a year only on Mischief Night. Larry and Fred ask Boo where they might find Ghoul, but he has no idea because he's never seen him. But then he says he could just be a story that people tell their children, and Larry is distraught by this. And I mean, I don't blame him. Given that a second ago he was told that Ghoul was a legend, then he was told he was real, but then actually no, he's a legend again. He tells Larry and Fred that there's rumors of Ghoul living somewhere down the Brick Road of the Dead. And that's where things get even weirder. Fred states that the Brick Road of the Dead doesn't exist in the realm of dimensional physics. Therefore, it's endless, and if they were traveling it, they would be traveling it endlessly. How Fred knows so much about dimensional physics, I have no idea. Larry then states he's heard nothing but bad things about the Brick Road of the Dead, and that it's only used by creepers. And Boo tells them that that's all true, but they've really cleaned it up in recent centuries, and they've even added a community garden to it. But said garden is full of man-eating plants and banana spiders. Spoiler alert, we don't see either of these going forward. Fred is hesitant about this and tells Boo that they'll probably just stay home, watch the festivities on TV, and play some board games. But Boo says that's boring and tells them to live their lives, and this is just enough peer pressure to kick them into gear. Larry says yes and Fred says no, but that doesn't matter because we get a scene change. And by scene change, I mean establishing shot and then back to the exact same road we've been walking down for the last 15 minutes. Larry and Fred decide, why the hell not? Nothing bad can happen since, well, they're already dead. Fred points out the obvious by stating he's a mummy and Larry is a zombie. Two of the scariest things ever, so whatever might try to cause them harm on their journey will be no match for them. They hear an owl in the distance and Fred gets frightened. Fred asks what that noise was and he says it sounds like a raptor, but Larry tells him to calm down because it's just their friend Hootie, and then they head off into the fog. A big ominous castle is shown. Inside said castle, a little creature runs up the flight of stairs, narrowly avoiding traps despite being completely unfazed by them. I don't understand why this is all so quiet. All we hear are some ambient sounds and the sound of swords coming down, but that's it. The creature doesn't even make noise while he's running. He reaches his destination and calls for somebody named Selma. We get a nice shot of the beautiful Selma and then a weird close-up of the creature. I kid you not, this frame is from the movie. This looks like a weird screenshot from World of Warcraft, but nope, this is the creature they get the McDonald's Sprite from. The creature tells Selma that he has news for her, and Selma actually says his name here, but I can't for the life of me work out what it is. Hins? Hins? Pins? Hins? Anyway, Selma is upset because this little guy was told to never disturb her, especially when she's casting spells. But the little goblin's news is just too important. Okay, she says his name again, and I think it's Hens?
Hens?
As in multiple hen? Am I the only one missing this? This movie doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so it's not like I can go and check, and I don't really want to go to the end credits to see, so we're gonna stick with hens. Before getting the news out, Selma shows aggression towards hens and lists all the other things she could be doing if he wasn't interrupting her. After an extremely drawn-out collection of dialogue, the news hens bears is revealed. He tells Selma that his sixth sense was tingling, and this caused him to open up his third eye, which revealed that Fred and Larry were traveling down the brick road of the dead. Selma isn't happy about this, but she tells Hens not to interfere. Rather, let them get scared by whatever they may run into, causing them to turn around and not travel down any further. She tells Hens to get lost because she has to conjure spells for Mischief Night. So there we have it, we've been introduced to our two protagonists, a helpful little toad-like character, our antagonist, and her weird little minion. Are you enjoying this movie so far? Because I'm definitely not. And if you are, it's probably because you need help. Anyway, back down to the town, and walking on the exact same street is Larry and Fred. They discuss how cool it would be to be alive again, but also think of the repercussions, as in what Halloween world would think if they were back to being different. So no matter how they choose to live their lives, they're not going to fit in somewhere. If they stay the same as they are, they'll fit in at their home but won't feel comfortable in their own skin. And if they go back to being humans, they'll fit in everywhere else but not at home and probably won't feel very comfortable in their own skin. They could have everything they've ever wanted, but also lose everything they already have. But they choose to focus on the upside. Fred says that he would love to go and have a bath, since he can't now because he's wrapped in bandages. And Larry wants to order food from a restaurant and try chicken pot pie and milkshakes. The two continue to fantasize about what their life would be like in this new form. They weigh up the pros and cons of being dead or being alive. Also, if you haven't been paying attention, you'll notice we're in a new location. That's right, we're out of the main strip of road and onto a bend around a rock. Since he's magic, Larry thinks Ghoul might turn back into a normal tree during the day, so it's time for our boys to hustle. Now we're back with Selma and Hens. Everything is going the exact opposite of the way they expected. Fred and Larry haven't turned back like they assumed. And in fact, they're on target to get to Ghoul even faster than they anticipated. But little do our Applejacks duo know. Selma calls in a favor that is sure to knock them off their tracks. She casts a spell to awaken her magic vortex mirror named Merwin. Now the spell is successful, but the animation was not. Instead of any swirl or fade in, any transition to make it look flashy, the portal just appears. She talks to the funny Rick and Morty portal and tells him that she needs an ally to stop Fred and Larry. So Selma requests that Merwin put her in contact with her old friend, Count Dracula. So that's right, Merwin is some sort of mystic yellow pages that can just summon anybody. Selma and Drac greet each other. Selma even suggests that they get together and enjoy each other's company. I think it's fair to say that Drac has the best voice acting in this movie, even compared to characters we'll see later on.
Ah, my sweet Selma. So fair, so frightful.
Now the camera keeps panning to Hens, and I'm trying to work something out. Is it just the bad animation and character design, or is Hens pulling a concerned face? Like maybe he's thinking, maybe we should just leave them be. Or the animation team was just like, hey, what do you think we can do with Hens in this scene? I don't know, I could maybe animate some new faces, like new reactions and things like that. No, we don't have time for that. Just reuse some old stuff. Nobody would care enough to notice. What about him? God damn it, just use the old photos. We gotta get onto the sequels. Drac agrees to help and says he'll bring the two in for a nightcap since he lives on the brick road of the dead. The two flirt with each other a bit and Drac hangs up on his Discord kitten. Selma describes her past with Drac to Hens, so we get a sense of their connection and where the flirting came from. Speaking of flirting, we're back with Larry and Fred, on the exact same road as the last scene. Fred tells Larry that he's been thinking, which I doubt, that what if this tree isn't so friendly after all? What if it doesn't want to grant them any wishes? Fred is very worried that they won't be able to change into alive people, which Larry is surprised by. When discussing this not too long ago, Fred was trying to come to terms with staying as a mummy, whereas Larry was adamant about getting their wishes granted. And now, Fred has had a little bit of a change of heart. Fred is worried about how dark and cold it is, the dark being something he's never been scared of as a mummy. But Larry tells them they'll be fine as long as they stick together. The pair reach this spooky looking house and are greeted at the door by Dracula. Here we get a full body shot of Dracula and oh my god. Anyway, he invites the two of them inside because it can be pretty dangerous out in the woods. When inviting them in, he tells them to kick off their shoes, lay your heads back and expose your necks. Drac tells the boys his name, Count Dracula, which freaks Fred out because not only is he a vampire, but he's Count frickin' Dracula. But Larry tells Fred he should just ignore the rumors and the bad reputation because maybe he's not that bad. But Fred is adamant about leaving because he's scared Drac is going to bite their necks and take out any remaining blood they have left. They're saying all of this right in front of Dracula, but he doesn't seem to care. Larry asks if they're headed in the right direction to find Ghoul, and once again, Drac invites them inside to look at a map. But Larry remembers what Boo told them. This tree's magic. He won't appear on maps because he's always moving around. But you know what does show up on maps? Tree monsters. This freaks Larry and Fred out, and only makes things worse when Drac tells them that Ghoul is actually evil, and someone you probably don't want to be associated with. And to put a cherry on top, Ghoul hasn't even granted a wish for hundreds of years. Dracula hints at wanting to suck their blood, so the two of them decide to leave, accompanied by Fred yelling,
Go, Larry! Go!
As the two of them turn around and walk as slow as they possibly can. Drac gives them a final warning.
Be careful, travelers. Some predators bite.
And Drac, being a vampire, bites, therefore is a predator. Luckily, the two of them get away at a remarkable pace. Larry starts to wonder if what Drac said was actually true. What if they come all this way and Ghoul doesn't actually grant any wishes? But Larry persists they keep going and give it a go, keeping the final goal of turning into humans in mind. Back with Selma and her mirror, she's asking who is the best in one of those mirror mirror on the wall deals when Drac joins the call. Wait a second, I've just realized, are they playing sneaky snitch in the background of this scene? Listen closely.
Tell me the good news.
Good news? I'm afraid I have none, Selma. Those wayward travelers got by me.
That's sneaky snitch, right? Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but that sounds a lot like sneaky snitch. Anyway, Drac comes with no good news, as he let the two travelers get past him. In Fred and Larry's defense, he didn't put up much of a fight. He tells Selma the truth. He has no idea where they've gone. They just ran away from him. They definitely did not run away from him. He then tells Selma he attempted to turn into a bat and fly after them, but instead he turned into a black-billed cuckoo. No, you didn't. Was it a mental Hulk-like situation going on in there, Dracula? Because you definitely didn't try to turn into anything. You didn't put up a fight, you just stood there. Selma is disappointed. She thought she could trust Drac with her dirty work, and Drac is upset that he's not as sprightly as he once was in his younger days. They get into a conversation about air conditioning bills, then Drac getting a job, then going on a date, but Selma hangs up on him. Good for her. Jump scare warning as the scene changes.
Ugh! Sentimental vampires suck.
That's right, we're with Hens now, and he's upset. He was the one who found out about Larry and Fred, but Selma and Drac are getting all the credit. He doesn't even get to go and stop the two of them. That was left up to Drac. And just as he's doing his supervillain origin story monologue, guess who waltzes in? Did you guess it? That's right, it's Boo. You were all wrong. Boo tells Hens not to beat himself up about it. It's only when Boo starts talking Hens notices he's actually there. After that long walk in front of him, it takes Boo saying,
Don't beat yourself up over it, kid.
for Hens to say,
Huh? Boo! I thought I was alone.
Boo tells Hens to go a little bit easier on himself. Not everyone can be Count Dracula, so just take what you can get and roll with it. But the biggest problem here for Hens isn't being a sea-level monster. It's not getting the credit he deserves. Boo reveals to Hens that he made up the story of Ghoul to give some hope to Larry and Fred since they were unhappy with their current lives. So basically, Larry and Fred are wandering down to nowhere to see no one. So I'm guessing Drac was pretending to know about Ghoul to lure Larry and Fred into his house? Wow, he really is a predator. Boo tells Hens that he needs to go speak with Selma. So just when you thought the boogeyman was the good guy, think again. Back with the unsuspecting Larry and Fred on their road to nowhere, they've reached a very nice pumpkin house that they're very impressed by. The owner of the house comes out and we are introduced to Big Head. Yep, that's his name. They tell him about their plan to go and see Ghoul, but Big Head hasn't heard that name in a very long time, but frankly, wishes he had. See, Big Head wants a new head, either because the pumpkin on his head, or because of how said pumpkin makes him talk.
What are you two doing all the way out here on the brick road of the dead?
Big Head claims to have seen Ghoul grant one of these big wishes before, so I really have no idea what's going on. Boo claims to have made up Ghoul, but Drac and now Big Head have both heard of him before. Larry and Fred invite Big Head to come and join them, and without saying a word, he does so. Back at Selma's castle, she's on another Zoom call, this time with Frankie, or more commonly known as Frankenstein. So I don't know what happened to Boo and his call from Selma, but moving on. In this, Frankenstein is Scottish.
Friend?
Hens appears to be listening from the window, at least that's what I can assume is happening because he's facing the completely wrong direction. He's still upset that so many people are higher up on Selma's call sheet than he is. As an attempt to prove himself to Selma, he declares he'll travel down the road and seek out these two travelers. Okay, Hens talks in third person here, and he's saying his own name, which sounds like he said Pins.
Wrap it up, Mummy. Chew on this, zombie. Pins is coming for you both.
And I'm too embarrassed to go look at the credits because I'm on page 9 of my script at the moment, and I've been saying Hens this whole time. We're going to stick with Hens and hope for the best. Back on the brick road of the dead, the travelers smell something bad, and they realize it's Big Head and his rotting head. Also, we have a new walking animation. There's more hop in their step since they're running out of time to go and see Ghoul. While traveling down the road, the gang is met by a voice by a completely unseen figure. When they get closer, they see that this figure is none other than Frankie. Frankie asks them what the gang are doing out here so late, and they tell him that they're on an adventure to go and see Ghoul. But Frankie seems to think Ghoul won't want to waste his time with any of these three, but they're not fussed by that. Frankie threatens to kill them, but Larry stands up for them. The two parties both apologize to each other, and Frankie says he's only out here to scare them into turning back, and that he thought there was only going to be two of them, Larry and Fred, but he failed. He failed at scaring the gang. While Fred is reassuring Frankie, saying there's got to be someone out there who's scared of him, there's this weird moment where Frankie and Larry fall down, and it just isn't mentioned whatsoever.
And you look like you could really wreak some havoc if you wanted to.
I really could tear you guys limb from limb.
Larry starts to question how he knew there was only going to be Larry and Fred coming down the road. And that's when Frankie reveals that Selma told him that. They ask Frankie who Selma is, and he reveals that she's a wicked witch, and she's the ruler of the road that they're walking down. He also tells them her plan to have Larry and Fred chicken out and turn around. Frankie warns the gang to be careful on the rest of their journey, and tells them if they're on the right path to go and see Ghoul. The last Frankie had ever seen of Ghoul, he was out by the bends in the road, about a half a monster mile away from here, whatever that converts to in layman's terms. The two part ways, Frankie stays at his house while Big Head, Larry, and Fred continue their journey. While they do that, we're back with Hens, who is now currently out on the brick road of the dead. He's getting scared by every owl noise he hears, proving that maybe coming down to the haunted road all by himself wasn't the best idea. Now we're back with Selma, and she's calling for
Pins!
Pins. Okay, his name seems to be Pins. I'm embarrassed. Anyway, Pins is nowhere to be found. She asks the mirror for help, and he reveals that Pins is on the brick road of the dead, which really ticks Selma off. But luckily, the hunky Frankie is here to save the day. He tells Selma that he didn't stop the travelers, and Selma is disappointed by this, and as a way to make up for lost time, decides to pull out her ultimate weapon. Back down with the travelers, they're getting closer and closer to Ghoul, but Fred is also getting more and more nervous. What if Ghoul can't make their wishes come true? What if he changed them in a way that they don't want to be changed? What if everything goes bad? In fact, Fred is worried that Ghoul will turn them into cockroaches for some reason, but Larry reassures him that it's what's on the inside that counts. So however this goes, as long as Fred doesn't change the type of mummy he is, everything will be okay. But things aren't so okay when a creepy zombie skeleton looking thing walks up to our ghastly friends. Fred seems to think it's Ghoul, but upon conversation, the golden toothed skeleton reveals himself to be Rattles, and I think he may be on some sort of drugs.
I fight until they're done, and I win every one.
Oh, he's like some kind of fledgling rapper or something.
The travelers are just about to get into a fight with Rattles, but they think they can handle him in a fight 3 against 1, but they choose the safer option and run away. And that's when they just so happen to run into Pins. He introduces himself, and yes, it is definitely Pins, and he tells them that he's going to take them down. He reveals that he's been keeping an eye on them since the start of their journey with the help of his sixth sense, and if they don't turn around now, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They tell Pins about the skeleton chasing them, and just as they are, he catches up to them. It's revealed that Pins and Rattles are actually good friends, and that Rattles also works for Selma. The two baddies agree to team up on the travelers, then go trick-or-treating once they're done with them. They run away again, and the bad guys accidentally hit the emote button.
How about now? Booyah!
Boom! There it is!
Selma is watching all of this through her portal thingy and doesn't seem too impressed. She decides it's time to take matters into her own hands. Pins, Boo, Drac, Frankie, and now Rattles all have failed at stopping these three, so maybe it's time she steps in and scares them. I don't really know what her end goal is, or more importantly, why she wants to do this. When the gang thinks they're safe at a pumpkin farm, they weigh the pros and cons of knocking on the door to the house. Either they can get shelter from the monster chasing them, or they open the door to another monster. Selma and Drac reunite out the front of a house and discuss Selma's predicament. And all they do in this scene is flirt. That's it. Back at the pumpkin farm, we see a naked skeleton man running down the road. I say naked because at least Rattles had some sort of coverage. This guy didn't. In fact, this guy, Tobias, is the owner of this farm and this house. They tell Tobias about their mission to go and see Ghoul, and he tells them that there's no tree around here called Ghoul. So was this journey all for nothing? Well, not quite. Tobias reveals that he doesn't know of a tree named Ghoul, but he knows where one could possibly be. So they go there. Fred says all the trees here don't look any different to the ones they've seen so far on their journey, despite one of them having 2 glowing eyes, which Larry notices. They talk to the tree and it is in fact Ghoul. They finally made it. Larry tries to small talk with Ghoul to not seem rude, just showing up and asking for wishes. Selma catches up with Pins and Rattles and isn't surprised that Pins hasn't been able to catch them yet. Selma reveals that she's just had enough of Larry and Fred getting through all of her minions, and that once she gets her hands on them, they're gonna be in trouble. The 3 are ready to set off and go and find the travelers, but Selma casts a spell that kills Rattles. Oh, never mind, it was just a sleep spell for whatever reason. So Selma and Pins take matters into their own hands and head off to find the travelers and find Ghoul. Speaking of travelers, they're still small talking with Ghoul, and after some jokes, they finally decide to ask their wishes. But Ghoul has some bad news for them. The whole Ghoul granting wishes story was just that, a story. It's all made up. So all this journey was for nothing. The gang is rightfully disappointed. Fred will be stuck as a mummy, Larry a zombie, and Big Head with a rotting pumpkin on his head. The rumor Boo told them at the start of this movie turned out to be just a trick. But Ghoul tells them they don't need to improve. They just need to improve their own view of themselves. Big Head may be smelly with a rotting pumpkin on his head, but he has friends that he's met tonight that are willing to look past that. Fred may be a dust-covered mummy, but he's full of thousands of years of wisdom and knowledge that nobody else in the town knows. And as for Larry, he may just be a zombie, but he's a brave one. He's a leader, and he's been the glue that held this group together on their whole journey when their lives are on the line. All 3 of them already possess the qualities they were going to ask Ghoul for. It just took this long, life-threatening journey for them to realize that. This is when the evil Selma catches up to them. They tell Selma why they came all this way and what they wanted out of Ghoul's wish-granting abilities. But she tells them that they risked their lives to take away what makes them unique. They wanted to be able to fit in with every other human and didn't want to hide away 364 days of the year. But at the end of the day, that's who they are. That's what makes them special. So now it's time for Selma to finally take them down and have them work for her. But Ghoul stops her. A bat flies out of the tree, and this bat named Mandy is Ghoul. Mandy tells the travelers, Selma and Pins, that sometimes we jump to conclusions, when what really matters is what's on the inside. Selma may look ugly, but on the inside she's sad and worried. Larry and Fred may look weak, but inside they're strong. So there was no Ghoul, it was just Mandy the fruit bat. Selma tries to cast her final spell, but it doesn't work because they're not scared or worried anymore. And without fear, Selma's powers are useless. Selma goes back to her castle and Pin stays. He offers to take Mandy's job in the tree. She spent years in there making people believe a magical tree existed, and that's gotten pretty tiring. So Mandy flies off into the distance, and Pins takes her place as Ghoul. Back in the town, the gang are all back home, the exact same way as they left, but that's for the better. And in strolls Boo. They tell him all about their journey, and how they may not have found Ghoul, but they still found what they were looking for. And because of this journey, they've missed the party. But Larry and Fred don't want to wait until next year to live their lives. So they tell Boo that they're going to take Big Head for a holiday. Speaking of Big Head, they hear him getting into some trouble with Frankie and Drac off in the distance and go and check on him. Mandy comes into Halloween Town and just talks about how nice it is. And to cap off this roller coaster, we're treated to a dance number as the credits roll, in which Larry, Fred, Big Head, Frankie and Drac are doing the Thriller dance, very awkwardly over just some royalty-free spooky music. Oh, and it even says no animals were harmed in the making of this motion picture at the very end. It's animated. Oh my god, it's Pins? It was Pins. And there we have it. That was 2019's The Halloween Family. This is definitely a movie. I will admit, I think I hated this one the least out of the ones I've analyzed so far. It probably goes like this. This, Pinocchio, Marmaduke. But I don't know, this movie was still bad. Everything about it was bad. I just feel like they kind of stuck the landing with the message, despite how it was delivered. The animation, voice acting, story design, sound design, script, and everything else in this movie sucked. I would still give this movie half a star out of 5 in my opinion. But me saying that may be the complete opposite of what somebody watching this is thinking. Like I always say at the end of these bad movie analysis videos, movies are the most subjective form of media there is. At the end of the day, I hate this movie, but somebody out there may love it. It may be somebody's favorite movie for whatever reason, and that's okay. So let me know what you guys thought of my analysis of The Halloween Family. If you guys enjoyed my Ted Niverson / Pyrocynical style movie review type videos, feel free to leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I have another one of these coming out just in time for Christmas, so that should be a lot of fun. Check out some of my other analysis videos. I've talked about some good pieces of media and some not so good pieces of media, but that is going to be the end. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week for another video. Happy Halloween and bye for now.